President Emmanuel Macron called for a snap election after the far-right National Rally Party triumphed in the European Union elections early this month, throwing French politics into disarray. Ross Cullen, SABC News Correspondent, joins us now for an update. Ross, a very good afternoon to you. So people in France are voting to elect 557 members of the country's National Assembly after President Macron obviously called for that snap election. So how is the voting process proceeding, and who are some of the front runners at this stage?
Well, in terms of the voting process, we have seen a record turnout, not since the presidential election of 1981. More than 40 years ago have we seen such numbers at this stage of the voting day. We still have a few hours left when the polling stations, like the one behind me, remain open for people to continue to cast their ballots. And I was just speaking to a friend of mine. She has never seen queues like today. She's in a polling station in the east of Paris and has never had to wait so long to get into the polling station before. So that gives you an idea of some of the lines that we are seeing in certain parts of Paris, other areas of the country as well, people waiting to cast their ballot in what has been described as the most consequential election since the 1950s. So much at stake after this snap election, after this lightning campaign here in France.
Very interesting to note, Ross, is the fact that the French voters will be the ones that are electing the cabinet members. A very stark difference as compared to us this side, where the country is still at a stalemate in installing the 7th administration with the proposed GNU. So this system has generally put voters at the forefront of decision-making on who actually leads them. What has been some of the sentiments from the voters about these polls?
Yeah, it's a chance like that for voters to elect all 577 MPs who will represent them in the National Assembly, the lower house of Parliament here in France for the next 5 years. That's meant to be the length of a parliamentary term, but the most recent election in 2022, we saw a snap election called by Emmanuel Macron, which meant there was just 2 years of that parliamentary term before we did see a new election come into play, and we are likely to see a very new makeup of Parliament as well after the final round and the final results of that on the 7th of July. This is important, this first round, though, because it does set the scene for the second round. We are likely to see 100 or so MPs elected straight away today because they've crossed 50% of the vote in their constituency. And we have seen Emmanuel Macron and a trickle of politicians casting their votes throughout the day, throughout the country. Emmanuel Macron on the northern coast of France, on the Channel coast, in the village where he is registered, casting his vote, and then one of the top socialist leaders, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, casting a vote just in the last hour in a district in the east of Paris where he is registered. And so there are still these politicians and voters, more than 49 million people who are registered and eligible to vote, able to cast their ballots in this election.
Look, some analysts have called Macron's decision a gamble with the potential to backfire. Is this the sentiment on the ground too? And maybe give us a quick background into some of the issues that need urgent redress to ensure stability in the country, as well as its geopolitical positioning. I know the economic issues as well as challenges were top of that agenda.
Well, sentiment on the ground here, speaking to some of the voters, one gentleman earlier who was heading into the polling station did tell us that he thought the result of this election was going to be ungovernable. Nobody getting an outright majority, no one party with an absolute majority having to work together. But when you have such differing political ideologies, the far right, the centrists, the coalition of 4 different parties on the left, all trying to work together. He thought that meant it would be ungovernable come July the 7th and the final results of this round. We do know there are so many issues at the heart of this for voters with different promises from the different political campaigns on healthcare and education, how to deal with the cost of living crisis, how best to address the climate emergency, immigration as well, so central to this because of the prominence of the anti-immigration populists at the heart of the message on the far right, Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella and their National Rally Party.
And in closing, Ross, if the polling goes well, when should we expect the first set of results to be announced?
Yeah, we'll see the first projection of results at 8 p.m. local time. That's when all polling stations, like the one here in Paris, will come to a close, shut their doors, and we will get a first snapshot exit poll of how they think the first round results have gone. A couple of hours later, late into the night here in France, we will get a better idea of the first round, and then over the coming days we'll get those results. There are likely to be hundreds of runoffs across the country where no one MP has won in the first round. Therefore, they go to a runoff with their closest challenger next Sunday, the 7th of July. So we'll get a definitive result next week, but we will get a very indicative result this week.
All right, thank you so much for that comprehensive report. Cullen, SABC News correspondent, with an update on the French poll.